John Wayne played his roles so well that it's hard to see him as just another actor. But there's a pretty wide gulf between the cowboy you saw on screen and the man he was in real life.
Wayne was born Marion Robert Morrison in 1907 in Iowa. In 1914, he headed west with his family to California. Young Wayne's closest companion was his little dog, an Airedale named Duke. The two were so inseparable that they became known as Little Duke and Big Duke, and thus a lifelong nickname was born. While attending Glendale High School, Wayne excelled at football and theater. At first, he believed he was destined for a career on the gridiron. He played so well that he received a scholarship to play for the University of Southern California Trojans. In his leisure time, he was a typical surfer dude at Newport Beach. Unfortunately, his days on the waves and his budding football career ended in 1926 when he was injured in a body surfing accident. This forced him to leave school, and he began working for local movie studios. Wayne's first job in the film industry was at the Fox Film Corporation, where he worked as a prop man. He shoved furniture and equipment for low wages, but it was a living. He was also able to serve as an extra in several films beginning in 1926. His first role was as an anonymous Yale football player in Brown of Harvard. He would go on to have 13 more uncredited roles before he finally received notice in 1929's Words and Music, in which he was credited as Duke Morrison. Around this time, he met director John Ford, with whom he formed a lifelong friendship. But it was director Raoul Walsh who finally gave Wayne his first big break in 1930's The Big Trail. In the film, the actor plays Breck Coleman, who leads Covered Wagons West on an overland trail. Wayne auditioned against 81 other actors before winning the role. Walsh believed that his actor needed a stage name, so he suggested Anthony Wayne. But Fox Studios boss Winfield Sheehan thought that sounded too Italian, so he suggested John Wayne instead, and the name stuck. John Wayne reportedly did not like horses. In fact, according to the book John Wayne, The Life and Legend, his own son Michael was taught to ride horses by stuntmen instead of his father. This revelation might be a hard pill to swallow, considering that the Duke spent so much of his career atop a horse. But multiple sources attest to this very fact. As journalist Gary Wills put it in a PBS interview, Wayne hated horses, never rode except on the set, and never rode when he didn't have to. But according to Wayne's son Patrick, his father was actually a terrific horseman. During the filming of 1971's Big Jake, Patrick watched as his dad stayed astride his horse even after it got spooked during a chase scene. Patrick also recalled the time when he himself was riding a horse for 1961's The Comancheros, and it wasn't going so well. He explained, "I looked awful. It looked like I didn't know what I was doing riding the horse. My father came to me and said, 'You're going to learn how to ride a horse,' and he made sure I learned. There was a later scene when I looked very good. So good that they reshot the earlier scene so that I looked as good then as I did later in the film." On screen, Wayne's persona was that of the ruggedly handsome man's man. But off camera, he was reportedly somewhat reserved and even awkward around women. Yet he still managed to get married 3 times and have 7 children. He married his first wife, Josephine, in 1933, and out of that union came 4 children. The marriage ended in 1943, though, possibly due to his affair with Marlene Dietrich, his co-star in the films 7 Sinners, The Spoilers, and Pittsburgh. Most biographers blame Dietrich for the affair, which began shortly after she saw Wayne for the first time and reportedly told her agent, "Daddy, get me that." Wayne and Dietrich's affair lasted about 3 years, after which Wayne married his second wife, Esperanza. Their union was marred by jealousy and drunken fights, as well as Wayne's alleged affair with actress Gail Russell. On the day that their divorce was finalized in 1954, Wayne married actress Pilar Payete. 3 more children were born before the couple split up in 1973. Wayne never remarried after that, although he did live his last years with his secretary, Pat Stacy. Between 1940 and 1945, as World War II raged on, John Wayne starred in 7 war movies. He had dutifully registered for service, but he received a 3A deferment for family dependency. As a father and sole provider for his family, he wanted to make a few more movies before entering the service. There's also little doubt that he wanted to keep his name fresh in Hollywood. He did expect to eventually go to war, though. But Wayne never ended up serving during the duration of the conflict. In 1942, Congress revised the Selective Service Act to defer all married men until further notice. The fact that Wayne avoided service reportedly annoyed his friend John Ford so much that during the filming of They Were Expendable in 1945, he barked, "Duke, can't you manage a salute that at least looks like you've been in the service?" Wayne was so angry that he reportedly stormed off the set for the only time in his career. There's also evidence that the actor thought he could have been more useful on the big screen than overseas. Ford's grandson Dan recalled Wayne once telling him, "I felt it would be a waste of time to spend 2 years picking up cigarette butts. I thought I could do more for the war effort by staying in Hollywood." Despite all this, there is also evidence that the actor attempted to find a way to serve, including a letter of application to the Office of Strategic Services contained in the National Archives. In 2015, this topic came up again when David James Elliott played Wayne in the film Trumbo.
Where did you serve again?
You trying to say something?
No, Duke, he wasn't.
In 1948, when Wayne was 41 years old, a look in the mirror told him what many middle-aged men dread. He was progressively losing his hair. From that point forward, he wore a toupee in his films, although he was occasionally seen in public without it. He notably made one on-screen exception as he declined to wear his wig for 1957's The Wings of Eagles. He was even quite open about wearing a rug. When a reporter once asked him about his phony hair, he quipped, "It's not phony, it's real hair. Of course, it's not mine, but it's real." As it turns out, a celebrity's fake hair can end up being quite valuable. In 2010, the toupee that Wayne wore for 1967's El Dorado ended up fetching $1,244 at auction. In 2013, another one of his custom-made toupees was found. That wig, along with its canvas block, sold for $6,250. In 1954, Wayne was in the Utah desert shooting The Conqueror, in which he played Genghis Khan. The shoot was taking place 100 miles from an atomic bomb testing site in Nevada. Officials assured everyone that fallout couldn't possibly reach the production site, although a Geiger counter on the set crackled so loudly that Wayne believed it was broken. Nobody knew it at the time, but everyone on the set was exposed to radiation as the fallout was blown south and east. People who were exposed in this way between 1951 and 1962 in Utah, Arizona, and Nevada are now referred to as downwinders. In 1964, Wayne was diagnosed with cancer. He lost a lung and some ribs to the disease. He would eventually die from stomach cancer in 1979. His sons Michael and Patrick, who were also on the set of The Conqueror, got cancer as well, though they survived. By 1981, 91 of the 220 cast and crew members on the set of The Conqueror had developed cancer, and 46 of them had died, including Wayne, lead actress Susan Hayward, and director Dick Powell. Wayne was friends with many American presidents, including Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan. He was especially supportive of Nixon, whom he rallied for in the 1960 presidential election. But Wayne was also a good sport. When Kennedy won the election that year, he received a telegram from Wayne expressing his congratulations from the loyal opposition. And when Kennedy was assassinated 3 years later, Wayne was as devastated as anyone else. Indeed, Wayne reportedly aimed to be fair-minded when it came to politics. When his friend Barry Goldwater lost the 1964 election, he again bowed gracefully to the loss. But when the chance came to vote for Nixon again in 1968, he once more became a huge supporter. The support was reciprocal, as Nixon appreciated that Wayne had a way with the blue-collar voters. After Nixon won the election, the two remained good friends, even when the president became embroiled in the infamous Watergate scandal and subsequently resigned in 1974.
He probably should have just stood up at the very beginning and said anybody that's done something wrong will go to jail. He didn't do it soon enough.
In 2019, a 1971 Playboy interview with Wayne resurfaced. In it, the actor expressed some incendiary views, such as, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people." Wayne also voiced his beliefs that black people needed better education opportunities, that the slavery of long ago wasn't his generation's fault, and that taking American land from indigenous people was a matter of survival. As he put it, "I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from Native Americans, if that's what you're asking. Our so-called stealing of this country from them was just a matter of survival. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves."
I'm sad to see minorities make so much of themselves as a hyphenated American.
Wayne also voiced his displeasure with socialism in the interview, saying at one point, "You can't whine and bellyache because somebody else got a good break and you didn't, like these Indians are. We'll all be on a reservation soon if the socialists keep subsidizing groups like them with our tax money."
There shouldn't be so much whining and bellyaching.
The interview prompted many responses, including some people considering the possibility that John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California should be renamed. Clearly, like many icons of the entertainment industry, Wayne had a controversial side that persists to this day.
John Wayne was beloved by audiences, but behind the scenes, he had a reputation for being unapproachable, stubborn, and hard to work with. And Wayne didn't hesitate to express his dislike for particular actors, some of whom may surprise you. John Wayne and Clark Gable never shared the screen, yet some pretty nasty comments have since gone on the record about how much Wayne detested the debonair leading man. In her memoir, John Wayne, My Father, Wayne's daughter Aissa recalls his disdain for Gable. She quotes her father from memory, writing, "He's extremely handsome in person, but he's an idiot. You know why he's an actor? It's the only thing he's smart enough to do." That's some harsh criticism coming from a guy who started out as a prop man.
Sorry, no silver cups.
Aissa believes her father's frustration with Gable came from Gable's on-set feud with frequent Wayne collaborator John Ford on the set of 1953's Magambo. Ford's abrasive, cut-and-dry style was often too much for Gable, who at one point stormed off set in a fit of anger. Though the film became a box office smash, Gable and Ford's relationship remained rocky in the following years. Wayne, with whom Ford had a strong camaraderie after several projects together, knew which side he was on. His daughter writes, "In my father's way of thinking, disloyalty to allies was expressly forbidden. If Clark Gable took on John Ford, my father's code demanded that John Wayne stand by his old pal."
I don't think you understand, Major. The war is over.
No, sir.
Out of every controversial thing Wayne has said about a fellow actor, this call-out might just be the strangest and most random. During the Duke's second late-stage career peak, Hackman had just burst onto the scene with Bonnie and Clyde, earning widespread acclaim and an Oscar nomination for his performance, but it appears that Wayne was never impressed. Wayne's daughter writes, "Hackman could never appear on screen without my father skewering his performance. My father called Hackman the worst actor in town." Aissa isn't sure where the animosity came from, since there's no record of Wayne ever meeting Hackman in the first place. This is especially sad because the hate didn't go both ways. In an interview with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Hackman called Wayne, quote, "one of the best actors ever." He went on to say, "I could never be the man he was, because his politics and mine would be incompatible, but you must admire how really good he was as an actor, in command of the scene and with such great charisma." It's unclear if Hackman ever heard Wayne's disparaging comments. Though reports vary about John Wayne's on-set behavior, nobody can deny that he had high standards or that his temper flared when they weren't met. If Wayne didn't reprimand you in front of the cameras, he could badmouth you behind them. This was the case for Kim Darby, Wayne's co-star in the 1969 adaptation of True Grit. Darby played Maddie Ross to Wayne's Rooster Cogburn, a relationship that lent itself to contention.
You gotta learn that you can't have everything your own way.
When I bought and paid for something, I'll have it my way.
Things got off on the wrong foot before Wayne even stepped on set. According to Michael Munn's biography, John Wayne, the man behind the myth, Wayne originally promised the role of Maddie to his daughter Aissa. However, director Henry Hathaway had already cast Darby, forcing Wayne to take back his promise and leave his daughter shattered. Things only got worse when Darby and Wayne started working together. According to Munn, Wayne said, "Darby was strong-willed, independent, and determined. That's great for the character, but not so great for an actor." Despite Wayne's best efforts, Darby was aloof toward him throughout the shoot, likely due to her marital difficulties at the time and being forced to care for her newborn child while on set. To Wayne, this made her come off as self-righteous, spoiled, and unprofessional, or as he put it, "I like me and my screen partners to get along. Jesus, I got along better with Kirk Douglas." Wayne's conservative politics made him an outspoken patriot, especially during wartime. During the Vietnam War, Wayne robustly supported the United States fight against communism, having previously supported Joe McCarthy and his Un-American Activities Committee. On the other end of the spectrum, Jane Fonda grew up watching her father, Henry Fonda, oppose Wayne's view of communism and grew up to fiercely oppose America's fight in Vietnam.
You know, it's funny, suddenly, I felt more than I ever had American.
A 1972 photo shoot with an anti-aircraft gun in Hanoi turned her into a 70s counterculture icon, which outraged many conservatives, including Wayne. He's quoted in John Wayne, The Life and Legend, as saying, "I would think somebody like Jane Fonda would be terribly ashamed and saddened that they were part of causing us to stop helping the South Vietnamese. They're getting killed by the millions. How the hell can she and her husband sleep at night?"
Are you typical of Earth women?
I'm about average.
Fonda has continued to be outspoken in her political beliefs to this day.
Clint Eastwood and John Wayne are two icons of conservative Hollywood masculinity, but despite their similarities both on and off screen, the two never worked together. Why? Here's the truth of John Wayne and Clint Eastwood's relationship. By the time Clint Eastwood came onto the scene with the TV series Rawhide in 1959, John Wayne was at the height of his legendary career. While Eastwood was sharpening his acting chops as Rowdy Yates for the next 8 years, Wayne was churning out one classic after another, including The Alamo and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Then in 1964, while Eastwood was on a break from Rawhide, he was offered a starring role in a Western with an up-and-coming Italian director in Spain. It was a fistful of dollars, and it wasn't easy thanks to the language barrier. As Eastwood recalled on Inside the Actor's Studio,
Sergio Leone didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Italian, so I was kind of on my own.
It was the first Western of its kind. The dialogue was thin, the main character had no name, and he lacked the usual charm required from the protagonist. It was a box office hit, and not just in Italy, so 2 sequels immediately followed, including the instant classic The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which redefined the Western genre. Despite its success, though, Wayne was evidently uninterested in working with Leone, at least judging by the tortured development of the film Rooster Cogburn. Though Wayne considered a number of directors before settling for the inexperienced Stuart Miller, who Wayne reportedly didn't even like, it doesn't seem as though Leone was ever considered. According to John Wayne, The Life and Legend, John Wayne and Clint Eastwood didn't meet in person until 1976, when Eastwood visited the set of Wayne's film The Shootist. Ron Howard, a co-star in the film, said that when Wayne heard Eastwood was coming to visit, he inquired about the man's politics. By the 70s, Wayne was increasingly isolated in Hollywood as a firm conservative. Still, Wayne said in an interview that he had always considered himself a liberal of sorts, even if nobody else did. He insisted that he didn't vote on party lines, but rather for the individual. Eastwood also shared this sentiment, at least from a 2020 interview with the Wall Street Journal, in which he spoke about being a libertarian as, quote, somebody who has respect for other people's ideas and is willing to learn constantly. John Wayne was originally offered the lead part in Dirty Harry and later regretted turning it down, according to John Wayne, The Life and Legend. Interestingly, Eastwood revealed on Inside the Actor's Studio that he had heard Paul Newman had also been offered the part, but wasn't interested due to some of its political undertones. So Eastwood, being the next runner-up, was cast as Inspector Harry Callahan in 1971, and the film went on to be a wildly successful franchise. While the critics tore it apart for its excessive violence and glorification of a bad cop, it raked in $22 million at the box office, spawning several sequels. Of course, in hindsight, there are several reasons why Eastwood was probably the better fit than Wayne. Wayne was opposed to excessive violence in films and protested against depictions of cops bending or breaking the law. Eastwood, on the other hand, had a history of playing anti-heroes, and it didn't hurt that he also did most of his own stunts, while Wayne's health was declining. Still, Wayne said in his biography, "I made a mistake with that one." Wayne didn't just meet Eastwood on the set of The Shootist in 1976. He also had to deal with Eastwood's outsized Hollywood reputation. According to John Wayne, The Life and Legend, the Duke was not impressed with much of Don Siegel's direction on The Shootist, and the two frequently argued. In fact, their feuding started even before the film began, with Siegel telling a reporter for the Carson City newspaper, "Wayne is supposed to eat directors for breakfast, but if he tries to eat me, he'll get indigestion." Siegel also had to shoot a handful of scenes around Wayne while he was recovering from a bronchial infection. When Wayne returned, most of what the director did while he was gone was okay, except for a scene where Wayne's stunt double shot a man in the back as he attempted to run out of the saloon. Wayne was livid. According to his co-star Hugh O'Brien, Wayne said, "Wait a minute, I've never shot anybody in the back and I'm not going to start now." According to Eastwood, he later heard that Siegel later tried to have Wayne ambush another villain, and Wayne again refused to shoot him in the back. Siegel said, quote, "Clint Eastwood would have shot him in the back," to which Wayne replied, "I don't care what that kid would have done. I don't shoot him in the back." Clint Eastwood's characters undeniably shook up the format of American westerns. The straightforward good guy and bad guy dynamic became more ambiguous and therefore far more interesting. Eastwood's protagonists often fueled the plot with vengeance, like in The Outlaw Josie Wales, while John Wayne's were justly upheld by honorable ethics, like in El Dorado. Eastwood's characters also seemed to directly reflect the new approaches to morality in cinema in the 1970s. Wayne's ideals were cultivated 30 years prior, and his convictions oftentimes appeared black and white in a full-color world. In Wayne's damaging Playboy interview, he talked about the dwindling state of democracy due to Americans' growing disrespect for authority. mentioning the Black Panthers' treatment towards police and the Vietnam War protests. He was also candid about his thoughts toward pictures that veered off course from traditional Western frameworks like High Noon. In the film, a retired marshal has to face an outlaw gang alone after the townsfolk refuse to help him. In the end, the character prevails but throws his badge in the dust before hopping in a carriage to leave town with his new wife. Wayne told the interviewer, "It's the most un-American thing I've ever seen in my whole life." In fact, Wayne disliked it so much that he later made the film Rio Bravo as a direct response. But for Eastwood, moral dilemmas and ambiguous endings like the ones pioneered in High Noon were far more interesting, a thinking that led him to make unusual and offbeat westerns like High Plains Drifter and Pale Rider. John Wayne preferred working with the best in the business since he seemed to consider himself as such. According to John Wayne, the life and legend, he felt that directors needed to be as well-rounded and well-experienced in their careers as he was. For example, he loudly detested Stuart Miller, who directed him and Katharine Hepburn in Rooster Cogburn, saying on Phil Donahue, quote, "He was a poor director." He then added,
kind of new around the business. And there's some question about, his capabilities.
So what does this have to do with Clint Eastwood? Well, Eastwood began directing in 1971. His first film was Play Misty for Me, which wasn't a Western. In 1973, though, Eastwood tried his hand at directing a Western. The result was High Plains Drifter, which many consider to be a classic. Wayne, however, didn't, and his strong feelings about Eastwood's sophomore effort would go a long way towards defining their relationship. In 1973, following High Plains Drifter, Eastwood was sent a script for a new project called The Hostiles. According to John Wayne, The Life and Legend, when the script for The Hostiles came to Clint Eastwood's production company Malpaso, Eastwood sent it over to John Wayne to see if he'd want to co-star in the film with him. The story, which Eastwood admitted needed some work, was about a younger guy who won half of a ranch that was owned by an older guy. The two unsurprisingly don't get along at first, but in the end have to work together to fight off a band of hostiles that come to take over the property. The Duke politely declined the offer and sent the script back. After Eastwood sent the script to Wayne a second time, though, Wayne let Eastwood have it. Rather than respond directly to the offer to appear in The Hostiles, Wayne instead wrote Eastwood an angry letter where he expressed anger towards Eastwood for what Wayne perceived as un-American ideals in High Plains Drifter. Wayne specifically griped that the townspeople did not, quote, accurately represent the spirit of the pioneers who had made America great. Eastwood didn't bother to write back. He told film critic Kenneth Turin, "I realized that there's two different generations and he wouldn't understand what I was doing. High Plains Drifter was meant to be a fable. It wasn't meant to show the hours of pioneering drudgery. It wasn't supposed to be anything about settling the West." Still, that didn't keep Eastwood from sending Wayne a third version of the script for The Hostiles. Wayne was given the third draft by his son while they were out sailing, as his son thought Wayne should reconsider. Instead, Wayne said, "This piece of shit again," and threw it in the ocean. According to a Wayne biography, Duke, A Love Story, he told a colleague, "This kind of stuff is all they know how to write these days. Someone like me and Eastwood ride into town, know everything, act the big guys, and everyone else is a bunch of idiots." Eastwood never went on to make The Hostiles. Wayne and Eastwood also had something else in common. They both held director John Ford in very high regard. John Wayne had incredible loyalty to Ford, who taught Wayne everything he knew, from his famous walk to the charming intonation in which all of Wayne's characters spoke. Wayne even called him Coach. However, Ford put a lot of pressure on Wayne, no matter the circumstances. But despite the tensions that ebbed and flowed between the two icons, Wayne was always loyal to Ford and openly referred to Ford's advice often when he was on other sets, from how to sequence a shot to the rhythm of delivering emotion in a scene. Eastwood was also inspired by Ford throughout his own career. During an event at the Directors Guild of America, Eastwood said that Ford's influence on directors, quote, is like osmosis, and that he watched Ford's films like Stagecoach in the theater as a kid. But for Eastwood, Ford's equations for westerns were simply jumping off points rather than rules to abide by, as he enjoyed the depth required to cultivate heroes that weren't necessarily straightforward in their intentions or approachability. When John Wayne had his one-sided exchange with Clint Eastwood over High Plains Drifter, it was the early 1970s, when Eastwood's career was on the upswing while Wayne's was on the down. Wayne had started to take roles he wasn't really interested in, such as the title character in McHugh, for the sake of working. On top of that, Wayne's health was declining quickly. He had recovered from lung cancer after a major surgery in 1964, but then started developing heart problems. On top of that, doctors found he had stomach cancer in 1975, right before filming The Shootist. Meanwhile, Eastwood had started his own production company, Malpaso, in 1967. In 1971, Eastwood received a Golden Globe for World Film Favorites. At the start of the decade, Wayne was still on top of the world, while Eastwood was just hitting it big. By the end, in June 1979, Eastwood's film Escape from Alcatraz cemented him as one of the biggest stars in the world, just 2 weeks after Wayne passed away from cancer. Sadly, we'll never know what might have happened if the two icons had found the common ground to work together. Wayne's toughest role may have come in real life as a man facing a difficult diagnosis.
They found a spot on the x-rays. It was lung cancer.
When Wayne was first diagnosed with lung cancer at the age of 57 in 1964, his advisors suggested he keep the news private because it would supposedly destroy his image, according to the New York Times. Wayne quietly checked himself into the hospital for treatment, and after a successful surgery, he finally went public, stating, "There's a hell of a lot of good image in John Wayne licking cancer, and that's what my doctors tell me." Wayne went on to make nearly 24 more films and TV appearances, but his final movie proved to be his most poignant. In 1976's The Shootist, he played a grizzled gunslinger who had been diagnosed with the same disease he had. Just 3 years later, in 1979, Wayne received another diagnosis, this time stomach cancer. 6 months later, he was on his deathbed. According to his daughter-in-law, Gretchen Wayne, during a couple of hours of lucidity in which he accepted his imminent death, he said, "It's been great." It was during a gallbladder surgery in January 1979 that doctors discovered a malignant tumor in Wayne's stomach, so they removed the organ. Still, the cancer continued to spread. In April of that year, Wayne made his last public appearance at the Academy Awards. He received a standing ovation and told the crowd, "That's just about the only medicine a fella'd ever really need. Believe me when I tell you that I'm mighty pleased that I can amble down here tonight. Oscar and I have something in common. Oscar first came to the Hollywood scene in 1928. So did I. We're both a little weather-beaten, but we're still here and plan to be around for a whole lot longer." Wayne died in a Los Angeles hospital on June 11, 1979, with several family members by his side. Their descriptions of his last day, as told in the book John Wayne, The Life and Legend, include the fact that Wayne, who had never been a religious man, converted to Catholicism and was baptized by a priest as he lay dying. According to family accounts, Wayne's wives were Catholic and his children were raised Catholic, but Wayne had referred to himself during his life as a Presbyterian. According to his son Patrick, some of Wayne's last words came during his interaction with the priest, in which he agreed to be baptized, but not much else was verbalized on his part. Though many might have expected John Wayne's final words to reflect his tough and gritty persona, it seems that wasn't the case at all. Pat Stacy, Wayne's assistant turned lover and longtime companion, recalled of his last moments, "His blue eyes were shining, he showed no pain. He seemed to be enjoying every moment of those 3 hours." On June 11th, the Wayne family was told that John wasn't expected to last the day. He had been semi-conscious during his time in the hospital. But that morning, according to John Wayne, The Life and Legend, Stacy asked him if he knew who she was. He replied, "Of course I know who you are. You're my girl. I love you." After that, Wayne fell into a deep sleep from which he would never awake. His daughter Aisa wanted to be sure that her father knew his family was with him and that he was surrounded by love. She held Wayne's hand as his breathing became ragged, each breath further apart from the last until they finally stopped. The beloved actor was 72 years old.
By the time of John Wayne's death, his film career had made him very wealthy, with a net worth of $7 million. According to Celebrity Net Worth, some of his assets included property in Arizona and in Washington state. While he did share his fortune with friends and family, Wayne was very selective in who he left his money to. His will ensured that all 7 of his children and his first wife received some compensation, either directly or through trust funds, leaving them all with 5- and 6-figure sums. He additionally left tens of thousands to both his former and then present secretaries. After Wayne's death, the New York Times reported that his current yet estranged third wife, Pilar Payette, was excluded from his will. While that was true, Payette and Wayne already had a financial separation agreement. It's unknown who received his various properties. However, some of his art and artifacts went to different organizations.